Here, this is a very important topic for me because as a founder and CEO, I've had the pleasure of bringing on a ton of advisors to the business. So I know everyone here has plans to be an advisor or is currently an advisor and wants to be advisors to more and more exciting startups. So would love to share some insights from the founder perspective. And I'm honored to be here with Deborah and Diane. So thank you so much for letting me tag along.
Thanks, Ed. Not many people know this, but Ed was one of the first people I spoke to when I was planning to launch CS Angel. And he's just been an incredible support through this journey, helping me create the space to elevate others in our profession. So I'm glad we've got you on here, Ed. I think it's taken 7 months to get you on here with us, but
I'm excited. This is a great topic. So I know we're gonna give a lot of great info to the crowd. So let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So why don't we start with Deborah and Diane? In fact, Deborah, let me ask you. We were introduced through Sturdy AI, which is a startup out there, and I learned that you were an advisor of theirs. And since then, we've obviously talked a lot more and become acquainted through CS Angel. But why don't we talk a little bit about your journey to becoming an advisor for a company like Sturdy? I think that would be a great place to start.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gemma. And thanks for inviting us to this conversation. Well, I think my journey is probably a bit unusual because I accidentally became an advisor. I knew the co-founders and the product I found very interesting, but essentially the product, if you're not familiar with it, we refer to it as the check engine light for your business. So from a customer success leadership perspective, it can surface behavioral indicators of risk or dissatisfaction. And so I had worked with one of the co-founders, and in this capacity, he left the company that we were at and wanted to share what he was working on. We had a few meetings and I just became fascinated with what they were building. And I think that level of interest and intrigue and curiosity led me to starting to make recommendations, providing support on their approach on go-to-market because they were focused on HR tech in particular, and that's a domain that I also have expertise in. So this was absolutely the case of right time, right place, right product. But I do think that some of the serendipity from this really comes from some of the things that we'll talk about later, and setting yourself up to become an advisor is through all of the activities that you engage with throughout your career, and the ways that you build your network and build your expertise, and then marry that to companies or products that you have deep expertise and interest in.
Yeah, so it's really kind of similar to what we're doing with CS Angel on the investing front, isn't it? Because we're bringing experts who have expertise in net revenue retention, and then we're providing them with opportunities to invest in tech that improves net revenue retention. It sounds like it's a similar approach to becoming an advisor, right?
It absolutely is from my perspective.
But the difference is you don't have to spend any money as an advisor, and you don't have to meet an accredited investor requirement, which is quite challenging for people to meet. So thank you for sharing that story. And Diane, why don't we hear about your journey becoming an advisor for OnRamp?
Sure. Again, thanks for including me. I'm really happy to be here. My journey, I think, is probably a little bit more traditional in the sense that, having been in this space for a long time and been pretty methodical about keeping my network strong and broad and deep. I have been involved in a number of communities over the years, including Underscore, and which is a very vibrant community for people in my space, as well as go-to-market spaces, product, and so on. And it's as part of being that community and just getting known among companies there and investors there when advisory positions come up, they sort of look to their own community for expertise. And that's, that's really what I recommend is, get involved in communities where, you can sort of share your expertise, get to know people. And then when these opportunities come up, you're sort of like an obvious candidate. It also enables you to sort of understand, what are the potential opportunities that are out there. You can throw your hat in the ring for them, but you have to first establish the credibility. So for me, it was really through Underscore. But there's other communities I recommend we'll talk about later that they think are particularly good for this. I think it's important to kind of be selective because there's a lot of noise out there, and if your goal is to become an advisor, then you want to kind of really make sure you're investing your community time wisely.
Yeah, definitely. So just like being known for what you're good at and finding other people who care about what you're good at can really make a big difference there. Thanks for sharing that one, Diane. All right, so on that note, you kind of talked about networking, Diane, and I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. So who should you be networking with outside of people who share similar interests? Who else do you think you should be networking with if you want to become an advisor?
Well, so like I said, there's so many great opportunities for networking, everything from LinkedIn, which is pretty noisy at this point, to, communities that are specifically for domain areas. And I think, it's all good. I think it's important as you're networking to think about two things. One is how you can help the network, and also sort of establishing yourself as a thought leader. And so, the things that I would focus on are focus on communities where, the CS Angel is a great example of this. Is an opportunity to be involved in a community that is specifically in a domain that I know a lot about and care deeply about, as opposed to I've done angel investing for other angel portfolios, and they're sort of everything from like biotech to, and it's interesting, but I don't necessarily have anything to offer in those scenarios, nor do I really understand it. So I'm a little less comfortable. So I would say, choose the ones. So things like, in customer success, for example, there's Gain, Grow, Retain, which is a really strong LinkedIn community. There's any number of them, but I'd say, pick a couple and then think about communities that have people at your same level. I'm not saying you shouldn't give back, but one of the things that can happen if you get involved in, really large communities, you end up talking to people who are like first-time CSMs, and you can offer help, but you're not going to get any leads there for advisory opportunities. So, I know that as I've been doing this longer, I've become more selective about where I invest my time, because there's only so much of it in the day. So pick communities where you can offer value to it and thereby get something back. And so that really means targeting those that are, people at kind of roughly at your same level, with your same domain interests. So that's really what I recommend.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Deborah, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to piggyback on what Diane mentioned about connecting with people at your same level. Oftentimes, that's where you develop even more skills. So it's not just about the networking, it's about growing your professional expertise and capabilities, expanding your thinking. I think building your professional profile, being active, doing what's natural for you. So I'm not suggesting if you're not a natural presenter that you go present at conferences. That is definitely one way to become known and to share your expertise. But comment on people's messages on social media, share your content and your original thought, become known for what you're passionate about, as well as what your expertise is. I think I come back to what Diane was saying, like there are certain areas that we have deep passion about, and there are other areas that are not natural. And if you want to be able to give back in this way, you need to find the overlap between your expertise and your passion, because you're really going to be investing of yourself in this process alongside the companies that you're advising. You can also tap into opportunities if you're with a venture-backed company. Oftentimes, you get connected to other portfolio companies that are perhaps at earlier stages. And that gives you an opportunity to start flexing that muscle and seeing if it's something that you're interested in doing. So take those opportunities, do the things that you're passionate about in ways that really bring forth your expertise, and be generous with that knowledge and expertise.
Yeah. I think you touched on the VCs there, didn't you, Deborah? And I'd love to hear from your perspective, Ed, as a founder, like how often are VCs coming to you and saying you should connect with this person, they could potentially be a great advisor for Catalyst? Does that happen?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I think it's important to highlight the distinction of like, what stage, first of all, do you as an advisor or somebody who wants to be an advisor wants to help with? Like in the early days of Catalyst, I needed mentorship guidance. I needed product validation and feedback. I needed operational guidance. Nowadays, I need introduction to somebody at a publicly traded company as a lead. Nowadays, I need insights on how to scale a business to $1 billion unicorn. I need help with recruiting and selling top leaders and candidates for my leadership team. So understanding like what stage you want to play in and where your best skill sets are is going to be valuable. And I think VCs are a great way. Like you work, most people here on this call, you can easily type in your own company on Crunchbase, and assuming you're doing a great job at your own company as a leader at your company, it is so easy, even if the VCs don't reach out to you, for you to say, hey, I work at Catalyst, and you are a board member, or we are a portfolio company of yours. Here's what I've done for the organization. I'm sure you heard about it in the most recent board meeting. I would love to help out with other startups. And most of the times these VCs would love to connect because they have portfolio companies that are younger than you that need this type of advice. And I would say another really, really great way, instead of waiting for VCs, is you can ping anyone. There's not a single person on this planet that you cannot get to if you really wanted to. Earlier, a couple weeks ago, I had a CS leader of a publicly traded company reach out to me and say, hey, I'm a customer of Catalyst, but more importantly, I follow along on your guys' journey. Here's why I'm excited about your mission and vision. That pitch to me immediately got me hooked because he understands and did some research on my space, because I get messages all the time. As will all the great founders that you all are trying to pitch and offer your services to. But the best part was he was very clear in what his ROI was going to be for me. And in it was, hey, I'm a very well-connected, highly respected revenue leader at a high-scale company. I'm sure you would like introductions to other companies that are my size and scale, and I know them all. So in addition to advising, I can get you intros to more customers. To me, that was an exciting thing because that was a tangible ROI that I need right now, which is more revenue, more leads, and this guy is super well connected. So being able to share that value prop without me needing to do a 30-minute call is also very, very valuable.
Yeah, it's like you have to figure out how to pitch yourself, really, and make it easy for founders out there to know exactly how you can help them. Deborah and Darren, have you had success with that kind of approach?
I think Ed's right. It's a combination of what I would consider to be sort of ensuring there's lots of passive awareness, like, becoming known, being active in communities, sharing thought leadership, helping other people. And then there is so things, opportunities will naturally present themselves because you're sort of in that, you're in the universe of candidates for those. And then there's the more proactive approach, and absolutely, I think that I recently, not that recently ago, started a consulting business, and having success with individual customers now enables me to go to, in one case, the PE firm that owns one of these companies, and sort of show the performance that I've been able, or the value I've added, and now they're open to introducing me as an advisor to other companies. So I think there's both what you do day to day in your career to sort of establish your presence and your expertise, and then take the opportunities as God. Like if something, if you see something that you want, think about how to connect to that, and make sure, importantly, that I wouldn't have reached out to this private equity firm and just say I want to be an advisor. I first had to bring them something of value.
Bring some value.
Just like contacted with Ed, he said, here's what I can bring to you. So I think both things work. I've had a lot more success with I think having that groundwork of my career has made me more confident to do the second thing.
Yeah, believe it or not, very few people on the planet is going to turn down help. But helping them understand what it is specifically that you can help them with is going to help them cut through the noise. And I think, Diane, you talked about earlier, there's so much noise everywhere that helping them filter down and facilitate exactly what's the ROI, especially for founders and CEO who get pitch emails all the time, that's going to be the most valuable.
Yeah.
I was just going to add on to that. I think if it's not coming through loud and clear here, you've got to be very targeted and focused in how you articulate that. Not every company is the right fit for you. So being very focused on where your expertise, your passion, and their need overlap is going to help you make the right connections and be able to articulate how you can have impact.
Yeah. It's like finding a job, right? You have to know what you want and take a targeted approach. For sure. All right, Ed, let's hear a little bit more from you as to what you would look for in an advisor as a founder.
Yeah, in the early days of Catalyst, we made a ton of mistakes. Honestly, we brought on people that had no clue what they were doing, and they kind of just took free equity. And honestly, that was on me. I think advisor is a two-way streak. Yes, I need your help, but if you become my worst advisor, this is a very, very small community. And next time somebody asks me, or if you actually put me on your LinkedIn or you put Catalyst on your resume and advertise, people are going to ask me, hey, how was so-and-so as an advisor? And I would say, if you want to become an advisor, the number one tip that I have is you have to be proactive. Meaning, instead of asking me, hey, Edward, are there any customers that I can introduce you to? That does nothing for me, because that requires me to look at your LinkedIn, research your network. And it's, especially for an early stage founder, that's time that I don't have. What would be valuable is, hey, Edward, I found the perfect customer for you because I'm an advisor of yours. I know your business. I think it would be great to talk to X. I'm going to intro you. Is that okay? That is an unbelievable advisor for me. So to me, that's the number one thing. If you want to become an advisor, starting from your initial pitch to all the way to becoming an advisor, that's how you get your second or third or fourth advisorship. That's how you get recommended to the best of the best startups, is when you're proactive. I think pretending like you work at the company, like legitimately you are one of the founders, those to me are some of our best advisors. Like I have advisors today that still ping me out of the blue that say, hey, Edward, this is person that you should hire right away. And maybe I'm not hiring that person right then and there, but it's maybe a role that I'm hiring down the line. But I will always remember that this advisor proactively reached out and was thinking about our business. So hopefully that's some good insights on what I see is a valuable advisor to us over the years.
I think so. I think it's really that two-way relationship, isn't it? With them coming to the table with ways that they can add value for you. I
have a Slack channel right now with a couple advisors, and that Slack channel is blank because like I have hundreds of other Slack channels, but it's like if I have to like communicate with you and ask, it's like what is the advisorship coming from? Obviously, if there's a setup cadence in which every meeting we're meeting, then that's great. But also, you don't want it to feel like a board meeting. And that's another thing is or in the earlier days of Catalyst, some of these advisors treated us as if they were a board member. That is not the case. You need to be very clear that you are not a board member. You are not some investor in the company. You are not somebody that I report to. Like, this isn't an opportunity for me to update you. You are given an equity over a period of time, and your job is to earn that equity. And I think we'll talk a little bit more later on, like what vesting schedules and things are. But
Yeah.
I would say most founders don't really say, oh, 6 months in, you're not doing any value for me, because that's just a weird way to like end the relationship with an advisor. But rest assured, they will never recommend you as an advisor to anyone else.
Right. So it's like best not to stretch yourself too thin and to really go all in on the advisor gigs that you have. And Ed, I am curious, if someone had the full package, they came to you with a great pitch, promised to give you a lot of their resource to help you grow the business, what other things would you be looking for? For example, would it matter how many LinkedIn followers they have, or would there be any other kind of markers that you would look at to identify whether they could be, a strong, suitable advisor?
I think LinkedIn presence it really depends on what I need for the business. I'm happy to talk about the advisors I do have right now. So we have one advisor. We gave this person a ton of equity because he's very well connected in the go-to-market community. There isn't a CS leader that we want to meet with that he can't get us to. There isn't a publicly traded company CEO that isn't part of this person's community. So for us, the value add is, yes, this person must be well connected, must have a lot of LinkedIn followers. Then we have another advisor on the go-to-market side, is somebody who is CCO of a company, very well respected, has seen a scale that we eventually want to reach. That person, I wouldn't say they have a ton of followers, but their LinkedIn resume of what they've done before is immense. But we're much later stage. So for an earlier stage company, I think it's more about knowing exactly what your value prop is. I think we talked about this. What doesn't help me is a generalist, because there's so many generalists out there. I can easily find somebody more experienced, more reputable, more popular, more LinkedIn followers than you. Because if you're a generalist, that's what I'm going to be thinking about. But if you come to me with a specific thing that you've done, as in, hey, Edward, I've actually built out the data infrastructure team at my company, and I understand how CS and data works together. I'm sure a lot of your customers need to understand how to connect data to CS. Can I be an advisor to help you talk with your customers? That to me is very specific, because not every CS leader knows about data. Like, I recognize some names on the call right now. You work for very data-centric companies, not just B2C or more generalized B2B SaaS tech tools. That data skill set and technical skill set is probably something that you should advertise, because that's a skill set that a lot of early founders need. So I wouldn't say there's something that I look for. I think when I look at your LinkedIn, the specificness of what you're good at should be very, very clear.
Right. And it should be aligned to what you can bring to the table as an advisor. Right. Yeah, totally. Let's hear from Deborah on other things that you've done to provide value as an advisor. Like, how have you positive impact?
I think I consider myself an extension of their team. So I don't wait for them to ask me for what they need. Oftentimes they do come to me with, a request to review something. I'm constantly thinking about the things that they're not asking about, that they should be, that I know that they need to be thinking about, and raising those. So being proactive. I think an important part of this is keeping the headspace, again, focus, make sure that you're advising companies that you have a real passion around. Because you will stay up at night thinking about that, and you'll be creative in identifying ways that you can help them, introducing them to top talent because they need to hire somebody, or they will at some point, and the people who are going to be a right fit, introducing them to people to do market research with Certi in particular. In the early days, they were really contemplating targeting HR tech and HR services companies. with their product. Well, I come from that domain, and prior to being in SaaS, I was an HR practitioner. So I have a unique network that I could introduce them to. So taking the time to actually provide a short list of people that you think are going to be the best suited to helping them solve the problem that they're looking to solve at that moment, or answer the questions that they're looking to answer, is really important. But not waiting for them to come to you, really staying engaged, be an extension of their team.
I think that passion piece, Deborah, is so key, because this is your first foray into becoming an investor. And every single one of these advisorships you're signing up to be a part of, I mean, if you're doing it right, you are grinding for your equity, and every move you make leads to the success of this company, which further increases the value of your investment. And because you're not an investor, you're an advisor, your investment is not cash. Your investment is your time, your thought process, you laying awake at night thinking about what can help them be better. And I think for you, if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be a struggle for you. And Deborah, the other point that you brought up that I think is super critical is that you have great experience in the HR space, and you're leveraging that. For a lot of advisors, they may want to broaden their network of things that they advise on, but you have to start with your own domain. So don't think that just because you're starting, for, as an example for you, like in the HR space, that you're pigeonholed there. Because I think if you do a good job with a bunch of HR related tech or whatever it is in your domain, you then can leverage that and parlay it into other areas of interest for you. So those are great ways to start, which is start with what you know, instead of trying to attempt to like, hey, I've worked in HR, I've worked in fintech, but let me come to you on the social good side or the medical field side, in which I have nothing to provide, and trying to be a generalist.
Great points.
Yeah, I would just add from agreed. It's again both the reactive and proactive. I think the and I'm like this, and when I'm dealing with a company I work for full time, whereas a consultant is, I think any request that you get, just be incredibly responsive. I think that show up for scheduled things. If there's an ask for something, respond immediately. Treat them as this is a customer of yours, and you're getting paid for this work. So I mean, think being super responsive. If they ask you for something, you say you're going to do it, do it. That's the sort of reactive, really being there and being professional. The proactive thing is always having in mind, regardless of what you're doing, like this is a a company that you're helping to grow. So for example, I know OnRamp is in a place where they're trying to, like, as most companies are, like, they have customers in a bunch of different segments, or should they specialize? And I happen to have networking with somebody who offers business consulting about how to pick markets when you kind of can't decide, like connect that person in. I've helped them interview for new candidates. I've introduced candidates to them, provided they've never really been through an OKR process before. I've done that a million times. Like, but you need to, like, listen to what's going on, observe, and say, hey, I have something I can help you with there. So it's both. But I don't want to. I think it always gets me, sort of the meat and potatoes of just like, be responsive. If there's an ask, get back. Do what you say you're going to do. And I think that just that is huge. But always having in your head, like, knowing what's going on with that company and being open to any conversation you're having day to day, and go, oh, I bet that would be interesting for these guys to know. That's exactly it. It's just a sort of ongoing awareness.
Yeah, I think that responsive time is so important, because often if you have a founder coming to you for something, like, it's important to them as well, right? So I'm just going to pause briefly to answer one of the questions coming in from Dan Hayward. Hey, Dan, how are you? I hope you got that swimming pool. So Dan is interested to understand how the advisors have dealt with conflicts of interest, especially if there's like a passion or specialism in one area, and it stands to reason that you may work or advise for companies in the same space. So who would like to answer that question?
I had that come up right after I was started working with OnRamp, and I just knew it would. I mean, there was nothing in our agreement that prevented that, but I said no. Like I think that it's when somebody is a clear competitor. If I wasn't that clear, I might have said to them, "Hey, do you view this company as a competitor?" But I kind of already knew they did. So I think you want to be respectful about that, and it's not going to look good for you if what you're trying to do is just get a lot of coverage, but at the expense of potentially having that conflict.
Yeah.
Let me just be blunt. If you sign up as an advisor to one of my competitors and you don't tell me and I find out, you're done immediately.
Right.
That is one of very few scenarios in which you will receive a legal notice and for all NDA stuff that you've signed, and like it's just not worth it. And I really doubt if you were to ask a founder, would any founder feel comfortable. Now, if it's adjacent, like, let's say I'm in the customer growth platform category and somebody in the onboarding space or customer success community space, like maybe it's something that Catalyst was thinking about building in the future. Like, look, I'm not going to say, hey, blanket statement, you can't work for any company that is related to customer growth data platform. Like that's too wide of a gap. But if it's very, very close, in which the founder would even have to think kind of twice about it, I would just shy away, because I think it's worth to lose that trust off the bat.
Yeah, like don't do something that you might have to apologize for later in this scenario. And Deborah, how about you when it comes to walking that tightrope of choosing who to provide your advisory services to?
Well, I tend to err on the side of trying to find really clear swim lanes so there's not a chance of overlap. But I also like working with earlier stage companies, and anything can happen. Those companies pivot a lot before they actually get to market. So I have always approached it from the perspective of, if I don't feel right about it, whether it's an advisory opportunity or consulting or employment type situation, I sort that out before even going down that path. I think anytime your gut is telling you should be questioning something, it's your sign to tap the brakes and check yourself. And I'm a big advocate of having conversations with the companies that I'm working with to make sure that there's no plan to go in that direction, or they feel comfortable with it. My allegiance is to the people that I've already established a relationship with, and trust is the foundation of everything with them.
Yeah, I think trust is critical in this relationship. And Ed, like, have you ever been in a scenario where an advisor's come to you and said, look, I was an advisor at company B and they were all the way over here doing stuff totally differently to Catalyst, and now they're kind of passing into your territory. What do you want me to do? Do advisors come to you in that scenario and say, like, hey, do you want to pay me out, or do you want me to find a way to get out of that agreement? I'm just wondering if that conflict's ever come up.
That has never come up, but we did have an advisor in the early days sign up for an advisory for one of our competitors.
Right.
And I found out only because I was looking at that competitor's Crunchbase, and this advisor wasn't, particularly helpful anyways, but it was just annoying to me to see that. So naturally I sent a very angry message, and this person just said they didn't know, because they have so many advisors and they advise so many different companies. And it's believable given how many companies this person advises, but to me it's like, yeah, like, look, I'm telling this story now. It's not a good look. Obviously, I'm not going to share the person's name, but if I did, this person would be screwed. So, like, that's not a situation that you ever want to put yourself in. It's like, you're advising so many different companies that you don't even know what lanes you're swimming in. And you're honestly not helpful. So no, we've never had anyone ask, because honestly, the answer would be clearly no. And it's not, in a disrespectful way. It's just like, how can I possibly tell you the most intimate things about our business and ask you for help if you are advising another company in a similar space? And I understand, like, you want to choose a winner, but to me, like, loyalty matters. Like, we have in some early days some advisors that weren't helpful, and all of a sudden, now that Catalyst has raised several rounds of funding and we're a well-known company, they pop out of the woodworks and say, "Hey, Edward, long time no talk. Like, is there something I can help with?" It's like, no, where have you been for the past 3-4 years when we've been struggling? No, there's nothing that you can help with. So I think loyalty is very, very important when it comes to an advisor, because you are a member of the team.
Yeah.
And like anything else, you are signing an NDA anyway. So you're legally bounded by trust.
Yeah. I think just being trust and forthcoming is key, right? Because I think in that scenario where I mentioned, someone could have like some small advising with another company that moves into your lanes, as long as they're open and honest with you about it and you find a way to figure it out, whether they stay on or not.
Yeah.
I think that's key, isn't it?
As long as they are upfront about it and I'm cool with it, and it's an adjacent space. And
Yeah.
look, it's on the CEO and founder to do a little bit of research. Like, is this company ever going to come in my territory? And if so, when is that even going to happen? Like, that's one thing. If this person is so valuable to me as an advisor, like, I'm not going to be like, you know what, I'm going to cut you right now because 5 years down the line, this small startup is going to join our space. Like, it's more important to me that I'm getting the help that I can. And again, that comes down to the value that you provide, but it's an honest relationship and an honest dialogue that you have with your advisors.
For now, though, let's move on to something that I think is going to be really helpful for everyone. So we've talked a lot about being an advisor, how to become one, how to be a good one, but we haven't talked about the actual equity portion of being an advisor. And this is a subject we've been discussing in our private Slack group of angel investors at CS Angel. We've been kind of swapping notes on what we think is a reasonable amount of equity to be offered as an advisor. And the notes that we shared found a equity amount of anything from 0.2 to 1% equity for typical advisor agreements. So wanted to hear from the panelists here as to whether you agree that 0.2 to 1% equity is the right range that you should be seeking in an advisor agreement. Let's start with you, Deborah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in my experience, the company has already set the equity amount, so it wasn't really negotiable. And it was mostly in the mid of that range, like 0.5%. I haven't seen anything go up to 1%. I tend to advise companies in earlier stages, though. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I'm curious on Diane and Edward's input on that.
Yeah, and this could be because I'm still, relatively new to advising, in the last couple of years or so. And I didn't negotiate this. It was preset. I feel like, you have to earn your stripes. And also it depends a lot on the stage of the company and how many advisors they have. And, and then over time, how much value you provide. So I actually don't really view it as a huge equity win. And it's more about, getting the chance to get engaged with these companies. And sure, there's some upside, but I think the wrong way to think about it when you're starting out is, hey, I'm in this to make, to have a big windfall. I think it's really about, get in there, see what equity they're offering, take that, and then prove your value. And if you think you can get more or want to ask for more, that's fine. But I don't really recommend going in with that as like a primary driver.
Right.
And then I just think it will naturally grow over time. Yeah.
It's not like a name your own price kind of deal.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
I
like
think,
land and expand, right? Land and expand.
I've tickled Edward with this one because I know he has some strong feelings about it.
Yeah, I think Diana spot on not going in there with that mindset. And look, just put it bluntly, like everyone on this call, if you're here to learn how to be an advisor, you're in the earlier stages of being an advisor. And the unfortunate part of that is you are not going to be able to negotiate any type of equity, because if you're on your first opportunity doing it, there's 50 other people that I could go to. So unless you are the best and the best for that specific skill set, and I reached out to you and I'm dying for your advisorship, that's a different scenario in which we have done that, in which when I'm reaching out and I really need this person, that you should absolutely negotiate. So if for those folks on the call, if anyone, a startup ever reaches out to you and says, hey, I read on your LinkedIn that you're great at this, this is something I so desperately need, absolutely negotiate. That said, there is still a range within, like, I think Deborah, you mentioned 0.5. That's definitely the upper tier from what I've seen and what I've personally given out, especially in the early stages. Like 1% is what you're giving to a season. That's 1% is what I'm giving to seasoned leaders that are joining my company who work there full time. 1% is generally not given out to folks. Now there's on the flip side of that, if you're joining as a board advisor and a board observer, that's when you're getting the 1%. I think that's actually the ultimate threshold for what an advisor can be, in my opinion, which is you become from a startup advisor and you graduate to become a board level advisor for much later stage organizations. And that's when you make the 1%, 2%, because they really value your expertise and they're destined for success and they need your advice and your support, or they just kind of need your presence on the board for whatever reason. But that's very, very late stage stuff. But I think generally what I've seen is 0.1 to 0.25. And look, it's not going to be life-changing money. Like unless you got on Uber, Facebook type of companies in which over a 5-year period of time, it skyrockets. To Diane's point, like this is a way for you to build experience. But if you have 5 of these and they all hit, then yeah, I think there is a general strong possibility that you're going to make a tremendous amount of money. But ultimately, I would not think about it that way.
And you mentioned maybe having like, I think you said up to 5 companies that you could advise. Deborah and Diane, do you think that sounds like a healthy number?
I would say it depends.
Yeah.
I'm a quality over quantity type person, and I'm balancing not only advising, but also other work. So I think you need to determine what the right mix is for you, how much capacity you have, how much you have going on in your life. I think for some people that would be perfect. For me, I would be stressed. So I think it's a very personal decision, and you need to make sure that you can adequately contribute to each of the companies that you agree to do this for.
Yeah, I agree. When thinking about this, I really think about can I put it's same thing as about being selective about, the communities you get engaged in. As you know, time is the most precious commodity that any of us have. And so, if you're going to spend your time on something, you should make sure that it's, you're feeling like you're getting something for it, you're offering good value for that time. And then, the minute that starts to shrink because of quantity. So I just, for me, it's about, what additional time would this require? And would it impact the value that I'm adding or the experience that I'm providing in other areas? So I'm not about, whoever that person is that has a million companies. Like, I don't understand that unless like that only source of income or something. Like that's just a weird model to me. But so that I think about it more like I only want to advise companies where I care about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I like the people, which is, I'm at a place in my career where like I don't want to work with people I don't enjoy working with. And so I kind of want to really like the people that I'm working with and believe in what they're doing. And that kind of narrows the population down. So it's and then hold it up against the other commitments I have on my time.
Yeah, I think the key is like advise in something that you love, that you wouldn't mind spending your evenings and weekends working on. Because if you're a busy operator, it is hard to spread yourself out to too many different organizations. On that note about time, is time something that people should expect to see in an advisor agreement? Like, Ed, in your advisor agreement template, do you include things like the amount of time that people should be willing to provide to you?
I think these are one things that you can perhaps negotiate. Not the amount, but just a vesting schedule and periods. Like I've had some advisors that said, look, I'm not gonna trial and interview. Like you're not gonna tell me there's a 6 month vesting schedule and I want to vest right away. As in, I know I'm gonna bring the value. And to me, that takes convincing to remove the cliff from a vesting schedule. But if that's how the person is, the value that they're going to bring, they're absolutely can do it. Time commitments are for most standard agreements, they're locked in. But I would not say, and Deborah and Don would know way more about this than I did. I would not say that that's the framework. As in, like if I put meet 4 times a month, like the great advisors like Deborah and Diane are not only showing up 4 times a month, they're pinging, they're texting, like it shifts gears automatically. I think the 4 times a month is just like a safeguard because you're getting to know each other. You should definitely commit to that, but great relationships are never dictated by that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be more organic than that.
Yeah, I think it's more of a, in the treat it like you would assessing any opportunity. When you're talking with a company and they're talking to you, it's like, talk about expectations. Here's how I see this working, and you'll tell right away whether there's a kind of a mind meld on expectations, and it's less about, oh, we're going to meet once a week for half an hour. It's more like, here's how I would love to be able to leverage you. Here's the value I'd like to be able to provide, and you'll just be able to tell whether there's a fit or not. If it feels, if it doesn't feel good, like at a relationship level, then no amount of like commitments on time will help.
Yeah, for those on the call, like if your secret power is you are a great networker and you can connect people and that's what you're going to provide, like for one of my advisors, that's what that person is. There's nothing drafted in that. I am constantly just texting this person, hey, can you intro me to this person? Can you intro me to this person? And it's a 24/7 thing, but this person never has to meet with me. Like it is very clear what this person is signing up for. Like I am using your network. They love it. They view that every person that they introduce Catalyst to increases their equity. So it's a great relationship. And, when this person wants to meet up and talk about the business, I'm happy to. But generally, I am just firing away over text, over Slack, like, hey, intro me. It's super quick, super transactional. And there's no commitment laid out on this person's advisor agreement.
Deborah, what else do you look for in an advisor agreement?
For me, it's less about the agreement and more about the what is the word that I'd look for? Compatibility with not only the product, but the team. So a lot of what we're chatting about here is less about dictating the terms of the relationship and more about ensuring that there is alignment with the team that you're going to be working with and the product or the business that you're going to be involved in. So a lot of discussion around, you should definitely be clear. Are you going to need me to come in person to meetings? Are there going to be large chunks of time? Definitely, but that's not necessarily defined in the agreement. That's more around the courting stage, the discussion, and just ensuring that you're both on the same page with regard to what's needed and what that level of contribution is. For me, it's more about the chemistry than it is the agreement. Honestly, from my point of view, the agreement is around NDA and the equity component. That's really it. Everything else is the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. So vesting schedule, cliff, equity component, that's just going to be a template, but really get ready to sign the template and focus on checking compatibility, I think is what we're hearing.
One thing that I think you can negotiate also is milestones, top ups, and refreshes. So as in, hey, if I help you achieve certain goals, I want the opportunity to do another advisor agreement for X amount. Or if I help you hit this milestone, I would like 0.05 or 0.1 more. And that milestone, you just have to analyze and assess that. Is it worthwhile for the founder? And that is a really, really great way, if for a company that you believe in, that you're going to go in on and really dedicate your time to drive that success. That's a win-win for both sides, because whatever outcome that you're deciding on is going to be a good way for you to get more equity, which is something that you're passionate about. So I would definitely negotiate that. But unless you're really going to be able to nail that outcome, that's kind of depending on you.